Welcome to Risk Roundup. The ongoing technology revolution in cyberspace is altering everything from how we communicate to how we make friends, work, bank, shop, go to war, and so much more. The emergence of this rapidly innovating whole new world of cyberspace has given individuals and entities across nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia, in short referred to as NGIOA, great promise as well as great peril. We all know that irrespective of cyberspace, geospace, or space, the world is never shaped by just the technology. While the transformative abilities that technology from cyberspace brings humans, the impact cyber technology has on every component of a nation, the influence cyber technology has on individual and collective human behavior, and the ability cyber technology brings in defining and designing new modes of business, management, governance, processes, and more is a step towards progress and development and the very future of humanity. Its interconnections and interdependencies with geospace and space also brings us many unwanted risks. While it is difficult to make precise predictions about the future of cyberspace, geospace, or space, or its associated security issues, we do need to explore how connected computers, internet, and the existing and emerging forces in cyberspace could intersect to reshape the relationship between humans and technology, and what it will mean to be secure today and in the coming tomorrow. To discuss future of cyberspace further, I'm honored to welcome Harold Collum to Risk Roundup. Harold is the founder and executive director of Cyber Future Foundation and is based in the United States. Welcome, Harold. We are delighted to have you on Risk Roundup.
Having me. My pleasure.
Wonderful, Harold. So let's begin by discussing this. What is the future of cyberspace?
Okay, now if I wouldn't ask that question, no one knows the future. What we do know is that more of an integral part in everyone's life. I was sitting at a conference room yesterday, and we were discussing how 20 years ago there were many parts of the globe that were completely inaccessible to technology and to communications, and now there's really no part of the globe, some of the most remote parts of Africa, South America, the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, Russia, and so forth, now have ubiquitous coverage through things right here. So the future is it's bright, I would say. The future is going to bring technologies that we can't even imagine today. There's the digitization of so much of our life now. So we take that digitization process from the analog to the digital, and then we use the cyber domain as the communications channel, as the knowledge transfer mechanism. So the future is only going to be limited by the imaginations and work of those in the future.
Yes, I mean, it is going to depend on the imagination, innovation, and the ideas that are emerging by not only individuals, but also, how the governments, how the organization industries and all they reshape and the new systems, how they emerge, that is going to define, it's going to be very, very complex. I agree it's very difficult to predict the future of cyberspace, and it is not clear because there are so many different variables and components that are involved. So let's talk, before we go further on the discussion, let's talk about what strategic trends that you see across nations as you travel and across its government, industries, organizations, and academia in cyberspace, and because of cyberspace in geospace and space, because now we are talking not just about the information and communication technology, we are talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, blockchain-based digital infrastructure that is being built for the digital domain, big data analytics, and so much more. So what are the strategic trends that you are observing?
Well, when you talk about governments and regulations, that's on the one hand, that's what we would call the limitations. In some respects, government regulation facilitates. But in some instances, I think it's more generally thought of that government regulation holds back or hinders or stifles innovation. So there are everything in life is along the bell curve. Okay, so we have some governments that are completely open. I would say that the United States falls toward that end of the spectrum that's tends toward almost total openness, if you will, to other countries that we all know have a very locked down cyber domain. So it's not accessible. It's not free flowing with information and ubiquitous access. And then there are a lot of the rest of the world is somewhere in the middle. And one of the big issues that everyone has, and I think governments, probably their primary concern is privacy. The privacy of what the government itself is doing, the privacy of the citizens of that country, and privacy relative to other governments and other researchers and so forth. So, you have the European Union, for example. They are taking a lead through GDPR in data, or forget data, information security and information privacy for the individual. Whereas, as we know, other countries, their policies are that they want to have full access to all of the information, and with no restrictions by the citizenry on what the government may or may not do with that information. So see is, and I've always seen this, that the more people from different cultures, different countries, different social backgrounds, the more they interact, the more they communicate, the more they collaborate, the more they innovate, and that propels. So let's just again take two ends of the spectrum. So you have a group from a very, very open society, open access to the internet and so forth, and then you take another group that are from a society that does not have that access, that develop in those different cultures. And so when they can get together, who knows what new ideas, what new innovations, technologies, modalities might come of that.
Yes, very, very true. And I hear your point in that there is going to be, while the cyberspace kind of levels the playing field for each nation, the nations that are ruled by governments that destroy incentives and discourage innovation, and their citizens don't get the resources that they need, or the motivation, or the systems on which they can build their innovations. The playing field is going to be tilted, and the citizens, they won't have the opportunities where the other nations, where everything is going in favor of cyberspace and the innovation, they will have better opportunities. So there are going to be a lot of imbalances. So nations that have been built on exploitation over the years, they are inevitably going to fail in cyberspace, and the nations that have been built on corruption, the entire system is going to come down. So the question is, what can individual nation do independently and collectively to improve its competitive and innovative position in the world, thereby tipping the scale of cyberspace in its favor? And as you travel, you must have seen that there are so many imbalances. A lot of nations don't even have the basic primary digital infrastructure that they need, on which they can build, and they can take the benefit of cyberspace and the amazing technologies and the potential of progress.
All of that's true. However, what I've determined in my, and I've traveled the world my entire life since I was a young man, and I would say that sometimes you have a government and the rulers of the government. Let's just let's break it down to the individual. The rulers of certain government systems who they exist very fine. Their lifestyle is not impacted by stifling innovation, by removing incentives from the citizens to develop technologies and things like that. So there comes that time. I think it's basic human nature to want to be able to think and communicate freely. Okay, and as I said, it's the communication collaboration that develops some of the great breakthroughs in technology. I think there are always going to be those societies that are behind, and they shift over time. They shift over the decades, over the centuries, over the millennium, as basic human nature is to break out and to be unfettered and unchained, and we see that happening. I've seen that in my lifetime, and there are tremendous innovations from countries that 30 years ago were not considered to be innovative societies, and today they are. You can take some of the Eastern European countries as a good example. I think you can take some as an example. Drastic change in 30 years. 30 years, that's not that long. So
Yes.
the technologies technologies are moral nor immoral. They're non-political, they're non-religious. Technology is just that. It's what I do with the technology that may add a component of political or religious or moral outcome or forces to it. So again, you have countries who have a history of having a religious leadership, and then a secular man, and that always shifts the relationship of the government, the people in the government, to technology. And then that, of course, filters down to the citizens of that country or that society or that region, their access and their relationship to technology. So I'm not a digital native. And I know that there are people in, we read a lot about some of the micro banking, the micro loans in India, parts of Africa specifically, very, very successful. And all of this within the last 2 or 3 years,
Yes.
Overnight, if you will. And I would say that's a technology that I don't quite understand. I mean, I haven't really studied it, but the people that are participating in those micro loan ecosystems are they are embracing that technology, and who knows how their adoption rate may be very, very fast compared to the United States.
Yes. Yes, that
Just
is.
the rate of adoption.
Yes, the rate of adoption. And in cyberspace, what is common to all is access to technology, data, and information. But what is not common is how one uses the data information, for what purpose and goals. While cyberspace has given nations, each nation, the same starting point in access to technology and information, do you see any other variables in geospace that will determine whether a nation will be able to use the information from cyberspace to develop progress and succeed across cyberspace, geospace, and space. I mean, we talked briefly about that many nations don't even have the basic digital infrastructure. Now, when the computer core and connected computers and internet is connecting cyberspace with geospace and space, everything is connected. So if you don't have, if a nation doesn't have a proper basic digital infrastructure, then how are they going to go forward with the space initiatives where so many nations are rapidly advancing towards space initiatives also? So the future of cyberspace is going to determine not only the future of space, geospace, but also the future of space. So what variables do you see that are playing role, and how are nations preparing for that?
So if you look at the history of technology and technological innovation, you'll find that a lot of that is driven by military issues, military concerns. So, we have the weaponization of space. We have the weaponization of the internet. We have the weaponization of technology. And I think that's historical. And I don't see that changing. So that gives an incentive for certain governments to want to maintain monopolies on technology, maintain on domains. Okay, so the domain of space, for example, and a lot of that information is classified. It's not shared with the citizens. It's not shared with the researchers, with the academicians. It's maintained behind those closed doors in the military discussions. So, it's always been that way. I suppose it's always going to be that way. And so I think what we do is we learn to coexist. We learn to maybe complement, and I think that's always something that's open for discussion, open for investigation. Is how do the institutions of higher learning collaborate with departments of defense, and how does that research it out into the consumer, to the population? We take the NASA, the space program of the United States. Lots and lots of technology has been filtered down to the consumer level, but this takes decades to happen. So in the geospace and the space, I think it is always going to be primarily controlled, certainly at the beginning, by defense and security-minded institutions, governments, military, and so forth. So there's a peaceful coexistence that we're not in government service or military service. We can extract that, and that always happens as well. So we extract the technology out of those domains, and then we apply it into the commercial and industrial, social segments of society.
But I mean, so far you are right that over the years it was the military who was controlling the space initiatives. But now there is a democratization of space. If you see, the nanosatellites has changed the space initiative spectrum. It has democratized the space, and a lot of private companies now are also, apart from the nanosatellites and not only the research initiative, anybody with having a desire to have their own satellite in space can have their own satellite in space now. It's
Yes.
so cost effective, and it's so everybody can take part in their initiatives. And in addition to that, there is also the asteroid mining and a lot of other space initiatives that are going on in deep space and lower space. And the space spectrum is changing so rapidly. So it is the connected computers has given ability to do so much more than what military was able to do over the years, as far as talking about the space. Now the world is expected to face extraordinary changes in the coming years, with growth as the only constant in those changes in cyberspace. And here the growth means more people. If we talk about cyberspace, more people, more devices, more connectivity, more data, more opportunities, and more security risk. The emerging trends in the cyberspace reflect very significant shifts of players and actions in the cybersphere that reveal the reconfiguration of interest, influences, and investment in the cyber domain of global politics and power play. So what shift do you see in the world politics and power, if any, due to cyberspace?
Well, once again, that's the private, the SpaceX program and all of those others, and I don't want to get into a lot of that, but that's been extracted out of the government, out of the military domain, and it's been extracted, declassified, if you will. So, if we think back into the 1960s in the manned space flights and so forth, there was not even only in the comic books would you have ever considered that private individuals, private citizens, private companies would be imitating that very thing and having a parallel programs. And now in the United States, with the space shuttle program shut down, they're actually the innovators, and they're leading that. So we can think in terms of let's think in terms of weaponizing, using weapons to control this proliferation of public-private space. Okay, through EMP, just EMP technology as an example. So governments, military institutions have no problem as long as there's always an element of control. That's just the nature of that aspect of society. So once again, you get to the point where certain governments may feel comfortable engaging in this level of openness, and other governments would never consider that level of openness. And so and you see a lot of migration of thought leaders around the world. Some of the most repressive regimes, they force out some of their thought leaders because they must find a venue where they can explore their ideas and collaborate with other thought leaders, with their peers. So as far as the privatization of space, the proliferation, let's take it back to the internet. So when IPv4 was configured, I'm sure they thought that was all that would ever be needed. Now we have IPv6, and I remember reading several years ago, 200 years of proliferation would never exhaust all of the addresses for IPv6. Well, that was before we started even thinking about the Internet of Things. We've started thinking about the proliferation of sensors everywhere. That's not even taking into account wearable sensors, embedded sensors, biological sensors. We haven't even thought that. So now that shrinks that 200 or whatever it was, I don't remember, but let's say a 200-year window. Now maybe it's an 80-year window. But 20 years from now, something may arise. Oh, we only have 20 more years until IPv6 is exhausted. But by that time, we may have a new entire protocol for this. So I'm always amazed at what people will dream up next.
Yes, very true. And industrial Internet of Things and wearables that not only just that will go on the human body, but also, inside the human body and biosensors and all kinds of things that
Ingestibles.
yeah, it's changing the whole innovation spectrum so rapidly. And you are right about talking EMP, the electromagnetic pulse, the risk that could any nation could face because of that. Those needs to be controlled. And the challenge is that not all nations are collectively working to prevent these kind of episodes. Now there is a great risk from North Korea. There is a lot of fear that they will do something crazy, and then we will nations like ours in the United States, we will suffer because of their lack of maturity on certain aspects, the government. So there is a lot of cause of concern, because how do you control nations like that? How do you control these kind of space disasters, because everything is connected, cyberspace to geospace space. And if we are not able to control certain nations, how do we control the bigger risk that emerges from so many unknowns in the space? So there are big complex security challenges, and we have to be concerned, especially because the nations are not working collectively on creating policies that would secure not only cyberspace but also space. And we have not even been able to control the security risk emerging in geospace, and we are already rapidly moving towards cyberspace, and we nations are not working together to collectively to create policies that can secure cyberspace. Cyber warfare is going on. There are no rules of cyber warfare, so there is open war field that anyone can, any private citizen, any state, anyone can enter into and create a lot of havoc. So there are a lot of risk emerging. And if we are talking about space, there are so many unknowns. We don't understand space at this point, and as we explore, and if we come up with this kind of EMP kind of risk, it's going to be very disastrous for the collective humanity. So there is a cause of concern. Now it is reported that on more than 50%, I think, I may not have the right number, but I think it's rapidly growing world population is now digitally connected today. And in the coming years, close to 100% of people would be connected. The Using the connected computers and the internet. So the internet dependence is not just a concept anymore, but it's the new digital global age reality. So this new digital global age reality brings each one of us an entirely new world of opportunities as well as security risk. What do you see is the expected consequences at each level? If we look at the opportunities at global level, regional, national, local, what kind of opportunities do you see emerging because of this growing connectivity?
Oh, so let's back to the idea of the EMP. Okay, so what's the effect of in the ingestible technology if it's subjected to electromagnetic pulse? We don't know. We would have never thought 10 years ago or 15 years ago, we have never thought that it might be possible to remotely disable, hack medical equipment inside of a hospital. We would have never considered that it would be possible to take over control of a automobile that had a crash avoidance system in it. Okay, so in the future, whoever it was, probably Shakespeare, said that past is prologue to the future. So again, we're studying human nature. We're talking about human nature. So we have these technologies, and we have human nature. Some people want to use technology, want to use innovation, and they're creative. They're creative individuals on how to use this to better humanity, to better the human condition. Whereas we have other people who have that confronted with the very same technology, and their mind automatically goes to how can I dominate, how can I subjugate, how can I benefit myself, whether it's financially, physically, or whether it's just emotionally and feeding the ego, because I can control other people, because I can hack into a hospital and shut down someone's infusion pump or something like that. In governments, again, are merely people. So that government is merely a group of people who happen to have a level of control over other people, their citizens, their population. So that mindset of those governing people, as long as it's somewhat in alignment with the expectations of the citizens, it's going to continue along that same line. Takes out North Korea as an example. Everyone knows, no one argues that is what we would term a rogue nation. It means it doesn't accept, it doesn't follow into the norms of accepted behavior in the international forum. Okay? Look at what they're using the technology for. Now, I don't know what the motivation is of their leader, but we also know that leader is influenced by other leaders. We know that China influences that leader. We know that the leadership of Russia influences that leader. We know that the leadership of Iran influences that leader. We also know that the leadership of the United States influences that leader. So what are those relationships? What are those interconnectedness at the human level that determines the future use direction of technology? Okay, so one of the things that the Cyber Future Foundation was founded on, one of our initial aspirations, if you will, was it came about in a conversation between Val Mukherjee and myself. We're the founders, and he made the statement over lunch one time. We're always talking about cyber warfare. I wish we could begin to discuss cyber peace. And so then I shared something of my perspective, which was different from his, from a different perspective. And we started thinking, how can we affect that? Well, through a peace initiative. The Cyber Peace Initiative is one of the things that we're working towards. We're going to be hosting the Cyber Future Dialogue at Davos, Switzerland, January 24th, at the World Economic Forum. And, because again, so much of this comes down to money. Technology, the use of technology, the misuse of technology. It comes down to financial gain, financial loss, financial parity. So through this peace initiative, we hope to be able to influence, merely offer an idea for discussion whereby collaboration, everybody wins. When you have confrontation, there's by definition a winner and a loser. Okay? That's the nature of confrontation. The nature of collaboration is we both win. If we engage in this thing, this activity called collaboration, we both expect to win. If we engage in this activity called confrontation, we both hope to win, but we know that the other will lose. So that's that nature. So is there innovation that comes out of confrontation? Of course, there is. That's human nature. The old necessity is the mother of invention. So when you have the confrontation, yes. But also when you have the collaboration, the difference between the confrontation and collaboration, that there's not the same kind of collateral damage when you're collaborating together as when you're confronting each other. So we hope that by having some dialogue like this, some people may hear, it may resonate with them, and they may take that idea back into their culture that may be more of the confrontational sort and may be open to a collaboration if that opportunity arises. And so then it's the responsibility of the leaders to give an opportunity for collaboration.
Yes, the collaboration and cooperation is the key, and the cyber future will be driven and shaped by a number of variables and so many internal and external factors that could be amplified or influenced by the public policy choices that are made not only at a local level or a national level, but and also regional level, but also global level. All nations need to work together to secure cyberspace, to bring the peace that we all are, looking for. Now, as artificial intelligence, robotics, cloud computing, Internet of Things, big data, and the cybersecurity looms large on most nations' agenda, how do you see these, not only this transformative technology, but other, policy elements that will define the future terrain of cyberspace collectively that could benefit the humanity and not destroy the humanity?
So let's talk about encryption and quantum computing. Okay, so today we have encryption algorithms that we can say make some encrypted files completely safe. Once quantum computing makes takes the next step, gets to that next level of implementation, the whole idea, the whole conception that we have today of encryption, that goes away. So what's next? Then that comes back full circle to that idea of privacy and openness. Okay, so again, we have in Germany is a good example. There are just adamant about privacy. They demand privacy. They regulate privacy. They give their citizens the opportunity to own their data, to own the information that's out there in the databases, in the files of all the companies like the Googles of the world. Whereas here in the United States, there's data that's being collected on us. We don't even know it's there. And if we found out where it was and what it was, we have no recourse. We have no control. We have no ownership over that information about ourselves. So again, there's this wide chasm between different cultures, different mindsets about what's important and what's not. There's a great book. It's called Public Parts. And it was written kind of a tongue-in-cheek to Howard Stern's book of Private Parts. And this is talking about the transformation over just a generation of what the kids today, the young teenagers and even younger than that, they will put anything and everything about themselves on the internet for public consumption. I remember 10 years ago, I saw my sister's daughter was, I guess, about 10 or 11 years old, and she had put her birthday and her address on the internet, and I freaked out, and I called my sister, said, you have to tell her to take that off. And I finally got them to remove the address, but still had her birthday and her pictures and all that. For me, I would never want to have that out there. But for the younger generation with the Snapchats and Instagrams, it's a whole different thing. So I don't know what 15 years from now, when an entire new generation comes along, what they think is okay and what they think is not okay. It may be completely upended from today. So we have these technologies like blockchain, uh, the distributed ledger technology. Uh, you know, how is that going to be used? 2 weeks ago, I was sitting in for my first time on an advisory board, and a lot of academics were there, a lot of PhDs in the cybersecurity education field, and I was sitting beside a very qualified, well-known cybersecurity expert, and I was looking at this proposed curriculum for the cybersecurity program. And I said, I see nothing in here about mobile security. I see nothing in here about blockchain. I see nothing in here about machine learning. How can you talk about educating students today for future jobs if you have nothing about mobile security, if you have nothing about blockchain? And the fellow beside me says, oh, well, blockchain is only for contracts. Okay. So there's a disconnect. It's such a huge field. There's so many moving parts. There's so many subdivisions of cybersecurity, of just the entire spectrum of the technology that we're discussing today. And to expect that any one person is going to know it all, or even have a good understanding of it all, I think is naive. So it's a matter of not only educating the future innovators, but also educating the professors, educating the corporate leaders, the CEOs, the board members, the advisory board, the trustees of various organizations, as well as government leaders, as well as law enforcement, as well as judges, because they're asked to maybe make judicial decisions on technology that they don't understand. So it's all about education, and the only way we educate these people is by presenting ideas for thought and consideration, rather than trying to cram it down their throats as if this is going to make you better, wiser, more powerful, more in control, or anything. No, here's some ideas to think about. This is how we see collaboration and innovation working, rather than confrontation.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is, I mean, education sector is very slow in making changes, and our curriculum is outdated. So that needs to change. But there are some signs that is changing. We do see some hopeful signs from across nations. So it's going to still take a time. I mean, no education institute is still ready, but the efforts are happening now. While cyberspace is rapidly becoming a fact of daily life, almost overnight, interactions in this cyberspace has been tossed into the realm of so much complex high-stake politics, and is at the forefront of almost all major issues we see globally today. Now, cyberspace has already become a source of great security vulnerability, as we see the ongoing cyber warfare and all kinds of hacks and cyber crimes that are happening, cyber espionage and whatnot. So these potential threats to not only national security, but it also brings this disturbance to the pre-existing global order. As we see, across there are great efforts going on by these cyber criminals to, even disrupt the critical infrastructure across nations. We have seen that in Europe; it's happening in other parts of the world also. So this is putting the very survivability and sustainability of nations at risk. So what do you see happening because of this disturbance of the pre-existing global order if we are not able to contain it, or if the nations are not able to come together to work collectively towards putting some sort of normalcy and some sort of sense into this cyberspace?
Okay, so let me address that from a positive perspective. In August, I had the privilege and the real pleasure of meeting His Excellency Ashok Murpuri. He is the Singaporean ambassador to the United States. Just a delightful man, very, very intelligent, very, very positive, and a real gentleman. And I had lived in Singapore for a short time, many, many years ago, and I'd lived in Thailand and Malaysia and worked over there. And I was familiar with ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. And I asked him, I was asking him about multilateral agreements between the member states of ASEAN. And I said, I'm very familiar with the genesis of that organization, and that it was an economic development. That was the real focus for the creation of ASEAN. And it's been very successful, extremely successful. And I asked him, are there thoughts, are there trends toward other type of agreements or mutual support along the lines of a NATO or something like that? He said, no, not at all, because some of the relationships between those member states go back hundreds and thousands of years, and there are almost hardwired animosities between various cultures and countries. And we discussed, and I understood that. I wouldn't have thought of it first, but when he told me, explained it to me, it made perfect sense. But then we discussed it. Shortly after that, he called me and let me know that their very first multilateral discussions within ASEAN outside of economic development is around cybersecurity. So I took that as this very, very positive indication that the cyber domain, can be something that can bring people together, something that traditional historical enemies even can come together and can collaborate on cybersecurity, on secure transactions, on secure economic transactions, on secure intellectual property collaborations. So there's hope that the cyber domain can in fact bring about a higher level of peace, cooperation, and collaboration.
Yes,
and maybe defeat some historical animosities.
Yes, it has a potential to bring all the good things that we are hoping for. But as you said, cyberspace vulnerabilities do not arise just from technology. It also arises from the inadequacies in the governance, processes, management, culture, interconnectedness, interdependencies, and integration. Now, if you look at nations, as we say, nations, and all its components, that means government, industries, organizations, academia, and all the individuals. Cyberspace has connected everyone. So if a business within an industry says that they have taken all security measures and they are going to be secured, but if their interconnectedness, interdependencies, their vendors and the suppliers and all, wherever they are connected, the government, if they are not secure, then that security they have managed to get for themselves, it doesn't matter because they are still vulnerable. Now, all the components of the nation, the government, industries, organizations, and academia, they are all at a very different level of security maturity. So the challenge is that, not everyone is progressing, advancing at the same speed when it comes to security. Governments that are supposed to be leading in security cybersecurity, they are not leading. They are quite, behind, in fact, when it comes to the security measures. So, in how many nations do you see that understands these complex challenges, understands that every possible building block of cyberspace, its framework, associated processes, technology, people, and ecosystem, they all are connected, and they all need to be addressed simultaneously. If we are hoping for securing cyberspace, if we are hoping to advance and progress and develop based on cyberspace innovations, and then take the next step towards the space age.
Okay, so to respond to that question, it makes me think of so one of our attendees at our Cyber Future Dialogue in January is Chris Painter. He was the chief cyber diplomat. So his job was to travel the world, meet with his counterparts, or maybe if there wasn't a counterpart in some particular country, who's going to own cybersecurity or the cyber domain in various countries. It may be the Minister of Defense. It could be the Minister of Finance. It could be the Minister, the Internal Security Forces. It could be any number of organizations within a government who's driving the dialogue of cybersecurity. So when you have a diplomat that is interfacing with these people that have different agendas, economic, military, whatever, it's really slow. It's just like they say in about government, period, specifically about Washington D.C. It could be said about Moscow, Beijing, or any other capital of the world, New Delhi, Bogota. It's really ugly to watch the sausage being made. Just to see how the government struggles to make the slightest bit of progress. But you're absolutely correct. So when the Cyber Future Foundation was chartered, we chartered 3 constituent organizations. The Cyber Defense Alliance, which is industry, corporate industry focusing. The Cyber Peace Initiative, which is government, public policy, collaborative in that sphere. And the Cyber Trust Institute, which is the academia, where we can get professors who are thought leaders and always have some level of influence on government leaders. Government has always looked to academia at some level, maybe not a great extent, but it's so academia has an influence into government, but it also has an influence into the future, because the way you train those technicians or those engineers or those security professionals, that's going to influence the dialogue a decade from now. When other people like you and I are sitting here having a conversation, they're going to have a slightly different mindset because of the next 10 years of innovation, collaboration, failures, and successes.
That's the hope, right? So, Harold, there is so much to talk, and there are so many different variables that needs to be discussed, but we are coming close to our 1 hour timeline. So, before we close this session, what would you like to tell our global viewers and listeners? What message would you like to give them?
Oh, I guess I would like to say that an open-mindedness is, I think, the key to progress. And in my own life, I've been confronted with things that I didn't like. I found them to be distasteful. It wasn't my preference. But as I thought it through and I realized that other people have a completely different perspective from mine, why do they have that perspective? And begin to try to understand. Again, I still think I'm right. I still think I'm correct, but to try to understand why that other person sees it differently from me. And that always gives me more enlightenment. That gives me more to go on. And I think it brings, and if that person can also look at me thinking that they are correct, and they want to look at me and try to understand why I see an issue differently than they do. Maybe in that process of almost an unknowing exchange, we're brought a little bit closer together. And by being brought a little bit closer together, maybe, just maybe, we will be the great collaborators of the future. So that's what we hope to achieve.
Let's hope so, that we are all collectively, individually and collectively, able to go that path and able to achieve that. So thank you so much, Harold, for participating in this roundup today. We appreciate your thoughtful insight on cyber future, and our global viewers and listeners would benefit tremendously from the information you provided on cyberspace, its future and complex challenges facing nations in not only cyberspace but also geospace and space. So even if a single individual or entity can come up with an idea to understand cyber future and come up with ideas to solve the complex challenges facing humanity in cyberspace based on the understanding they receive from the discussion we had today, this Risk Roundup dialogue has been of service, and we thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
So as nations spend heavily on creating the necessary cyberspace infrastructure to get more individuals and entities across nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia connected digitally to derive benefits from social and economic development opportunities that the connected computers and internet provides, the future of cyberspace is expected to face complex challenges and security risks. Risk group cybersecurity, geosecurity, and space security risk research centers are created for these very reasons, to identify, evaluate, and manage the risk facing NGIOA in CGS, that means nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia in cyberspace, geospace, and space. We at Risk Group believe that risk management, security, and peace, they walk together hand in hand. Though security is related to management of threats and peace to the management of conflict, risk management is related to management of security vulnerabilities as well as management of conflict. It is not possible to conceive any one of the three without the existence of the other two. All three concepts feed into each other. We believe that the security we build for ourselves is precarious and uncertain until it is secure for everyone across nations. Tradition becomes our security, so if we build a culture of managing risk effectively, it will lead us to security, and security will lead us to peace. Let's manage the existing and emerging risks together. For more information on the Risk Roundups, to watch the Risk Roundup webcast or hear the Risk Roundup podcast, please go to riskgroupllc.com and do not forget to subscribe and share. Until next time, I'm Jayashree Pandya, host of Risk Roundup, signing off. See you next time. Thank you.